Welcome back, everyone. We always try to dig into some pretty fascinating stuff here, and, well, this time I think we've really outdone ourselves.
I think you might be right about that.
This time we're going to be taking a deep dive into some excerpts from Murli, and specifically the one dated April 8th, 2025. Now, right off the bat, we're dealing with something really interesting here. Murli translates to today's Murli, right?
That's right.
And it's a spiritual discourse that's shared daily within the Brahma Kumaris tradition.
Yep.
And it addresses its followers as sweet children.
Mm-hmm.
So you immediately get the sense of a very specific and close-knit community.
Definitely. There's a real sense of intimacy and familial connection in the way it's written. It's not just some distant abstract teaching. It's very personal and direct.
Okay. So then getting into the content itself, this particular Murli really centers on this idea of the Sangam Yug.
It does.
Yeah.
And it presents it not just as, like you said, another era or a period of time, but as like this absolutely crucial and unique moment. It's like this central point in a huge, vast cycle of existence.
Yeah. It's not just a transition, it's the transition, the bridge.
Exactly.
And it uses such a striking image to describe this. It talks about the Sangam, which means coming together, and it calls it the truest Kumbh. Now, for a lot of our listeners, they might be thinking of the Kumbh Mela, that massive physical gathering.
Right.
But here it's framed as like a meeting of souls, this divine convergence. It's definitely not your typical historical or even spiritual perspective.
About it all. And that's what makes it so fascinating to delve into.
So let's get into the heart of it. Right at the beginning, the Murli poses this really fundamental question. Which lesson does the Father alone teach that no human can teach? So what's the answer?
Well, the answer it gives is pretty straightforward and really bold.
Yeah.
Becoming body unconscious, or dehi abhimani, as the text puts it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just presented as a suggestion. It's stated as a unique ability of the Father, something no human being can truly teach.
So dehi abhimani, becoming body unconscious. That sounds like such a radical shift in how we usually perceive ourselves, Can you unpack that a bit? Like, what does that really mean in this context?
Sure. It's basically about recognizing that who you truly are is not this physical body, this is temporary. This is just a vehicle.
Right.
The real you is the eternal conscious soul, the dehi. It's a fundamental shift from identifying with the body. That's what they call dehabhimani, which is kind of how we all naturally experience life, right? We're focused on our physical needs, appearances, all that.
Yeah, for sure. Our whole society is kind of built around that.
Exactly. And this teaching is saying, look beyond that, go deeper.
It's interesting how explicit the text is about this, too. Like, it really emphasizes that only the Father, Hathitin, can actually instill this understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's presented as a unique divine gift, something beyond human capacity.
Okay, so we've got this understanding of being a soul, not just a body. What's the kind of foundational knowledge that comes from that realization?
Well, the first thing you realize, the text tells us, is the awareness of the soul's journey. Where we come from, where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
So as souls, we're told we originated from the supreme abode, Karmdom, and we've come down to play a specific role like an actor on a stage. But this stage is way bigger than anything we can imagine.
An actor in what kind of play? This is starting to sound like a huge production.
It is. That's where it introduces this concept of the eternal drama.
The eternal drama.
Yeah, and this drama has a beginning and an end, but then it repeats endlessly. It's cyclical.
Okay, so no traditional creation event in this cosmology.
Not at all. This isn't something that was authored or initiated by anyone. It just is. And it always has been. It's a pretty different way of looking at the universe, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not about where it all began, but rather understanding the roles we play and the cycles we move through within this eternal unfolding.
Okay, so that's a pretty mind-blowing concept right there. We've got each of us as these eternal souls playing a part in this grand cyclical drama. Now let's dive a little deeper into this Sangam Yug. You mentioned it's like a crucial point in time. Why is it so significant for us, the listeners, according to this Murli?
So the Sangam Yug, is described as this really important intermediary period, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the link between the old degraded world, the Kali Yuga, and the new elevated age, the Satyug, what some people might call the golden age.
It's the bridge between eras.
Exactly.
So what is it about this particular time that's so important? What makes it vital for us?
Well, this is the time, this Sangam Yuga, when our spiritual efforts, what they call Purusharth, really matter.
Mm.
It's when we can make choices and take actions that will determine where we end up in the next cycle, whether we'll be residents of heaven, Swarg, or not.
And the text is pretty specific about that, isn't it? It actually compares its perspective on heaven and hell to other spiritual traditions, even mentioning sannyasis.
Yeah, it kind of implies that their understanding isn't as complete as what's being revealed here. This Sangam Yog is the opportunity for true spiritual transformation. It's kind of like, you are here, this is the moment.
Okay, that's pretty clear. And it also mentions the reestablishment of something called Anahankat? That's Das and Che. That's a lot to unpack. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? It translates to the original eternal deity religion.
Wow. So it's not just about personal transformation, it's about restoring something even grander.
Exactly. The text says that God himself comes down during the Sangam Yog, specifically to reestablish this primordial faith. And it lays out the cycle, how it works.
Okay, how's that?
Those souls that are stuck in the degraded Kali Yuga, through their efforts and their understanding during this special time, they become the residents of the Golden Age, the Satyug. It's a beautiful, self-perpetuating cycle.
So it's like the people who are struggling now, they have the potential to become the shining beings of the next era.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's all about effort and understanding, making the right choices at this crucial juncture.
that's really hopeful. Now, another concept that stood out to me was this idea of the brotherhood of souls. What does that mean in this context?
This is a big one. The Murli is super clear that all souls, no matter their physical form, religion, nationality, anything, are fundamentally children of one spiritual father.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates this deep sense of spiritual brotherhood. It even takes this saying, Sutu Tuichero, who the key Hindus and Chinese are brothers, and expands it to include every single soul everywhere.
So it's about way more than just our shared humanity.
Yeah, way more. It's saying, look, forget all those superficial differences. We're all family at the deepest level. And to understand that, the text draws this really clear distinction between the soul, the lock-in, and the physical body.
Right. The soul is eternal. The body is temporary.
Exactly. And the soul, it says, can be in a male body or a female body. It doesn't matter. The essential nature is the same. We're all brothers and sisters in the soul world.
Wow. So in this view, even the idea of gender is kind of transcended.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that deeper spiritual connection that goes beyond those physical and social categories. And then it gets even more interesting because it talks about how these relationships change over time, how in the soul world, we're all siblings, but then in the physical world, we take on different roles, brother, sister, husband, wife, all that.
Oh, that's fascinating. So the Murli uses this analogy of rivers and the ocean to talk about the relationship between the individual soul and the supreme soul. What's the takeaway from that comparison?
It's a really beautiful analogy, isn't it? It's saying,
Yeah.
look, just like all these rivers flow from the ocean, each individual soul originates from the supreme soul, the Akar.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. We've been separated for a while, within this cycle.
We're like those rivers that have flowed far from the source.
Precisely. And the text specifically identifies the Supreme Soul as the knowledge ocean, the Nikada, the ultimate source of all spiritual wisdom.
So what happens to the soul during this time apart from the supreme soul? What state is it in?
It explains that the soul, at the start, is totally pure, like pristine.
Okay.
But then, through this repeated cycle of birth and death, it gradually becomes impure, sort of like, accumulating dirt or dust over time.
So we start out perfect and then life kind of, well, messes us up.
In a way, yeah. And that's why the Murli says the Father incarnates into this physical world, specifically during this Sangam Yug.
To clean things up.
Exactly. To meet with all his children, these separated souls, and help them regain their original purity. And the way he does that is through knowledge and remembrance.
Oh, interesting. So it's not about punishment or anything like that. It's about remembering who we truly are.
Exactly. It's all about rediscovering that lost connection, that inherent purity. And that's where the teachings and the practices come in.
Okay, so speaking of teachings, the Murli also talks about Krishna and the Gita, which are huge in Indian spirituality, right? I'm curious to know what perspective it offers on that.
It's definitely respectful. It acknowledges the importance of Krishna and the wisdom in the Gita, but it offers a different take based on its own framework.
How so?
It suggests that while Krishna's soul does exist now, the Krishna of the Golden Age, the totally pure Krishna, couldn't have spoken the Gita in the way it's presented traditionally.
Oh, I see. So it's saying that the Gita, as we know it, might not be the pure, unadulterated teaching.
That's the implication, yes. And the reason is that the supreme knowledge that's being given now during the Sangam Yug comes directly from the Supreme Father. It's not filtered through any soul, even an elevated one like Krishna.
Okay. That's a pretty bold statement.
It is. And it gets to the heart of what makes this Murli and the whole Brahma Kumaris tradition so unique. It's all about this direct connection with the source.
Okay, so let's go back to this whole eternal drama thing for a second. The Heel you mentioned that there's no creation event in this cosmology. It's just this ongoing cycle.
Right. It's beginningless,
Beginningless.
no starting point.
Hmm.
No one created it. It just is.
Okay.
And the Murli talks about how in this drama, the old becomes new and the new becomes old again. This constant transformation.
That cycle of renewal and decay, we see that everywhere in nature, don't we?
We do. And that's what's happening on a cosmic scale in this drama.
Yeah.
And it's all connected to the soul's journey through 84 births.
84 births, that's a specific number. What's the significance of that?
It represents the full cycle of the soul's descent from purity to impurity and back again. And the Murli tells us that the Father arrives at the very end of this cycle to take his children, the souls, back home.
Back home to that pure state.
Exactly.
And the language here is so powerful. It talks about the Father as the ultimate guide, and even the listeners are called Mahagana leaving.
Yeah, spiritual guides or pilgrims. So it's like we're all on this journey together, but the Father is the one leading the way. And then there's this subtle hint about the Pandav government.
Okay, and remind me again, who are the Pandavas?
In Hindu mythology, the Pandavas are these righteous warriors who fight for what's right. And in this context, the Pandav government represents this spiritual force that's aligned with the Father's teachings, working to bring about the transformation of the world.
Oh, okay, I see. It's like a hidden message about the forces of good working behind the scenes.
Exactly. And it ties in beautifully with this whole idea of the soul's journey and the ultimate victory of good over evil.
Now, the Murli throws in this idea of two fathers. That might sound a bit confusing at first. Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, it definitely requires a little explanation. So there's the unlimited transcendental Father we've talked about on Central Call, which is the supreme soul, the source of everything.
Okay.
And then there's the limited worldly Father, our physical father in this lifetime.
So it's like two levels of fatherhood, the spiritual and the physical.
Exactly. And it's interesting because it goes on to talk about how Bharat, India, was the land that originally received the unlimited inheritance from the transcendental Father. It was actually heaven at one point.
Wow, that's a bold claim.
It is. But now, it says, it's become like hell, what it calls a kingdom dominated by negative forces.
So it's fallen from that original purity.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah.
And it talks about how the initial state of devotion in that original heavenly Bharat was Chor Tampalayata, what's happening to it?
Which means
Undivided, unadulterated devotion directed only towards Shiva Baba, the Supreme Soul.
so in its purest form, there was no confusion, no deviation, just this total focus on the divine.
Exactly. That's the state we're trying to return to.
Mm.
And the Murli lays out the path to get there.
Okay, so tell me, what does the Father say we need to do to become elevated, to get back to that state of purity?
Well, the core message is all about what we allow ourselves to be influenced by.
Okay.
The Father says, don't listen to negativity. Don't engage with degrading talk. He's very specific about that.
So guard your mind and your ears, basically.
Exactly. And instead, he says, focus all your attention on the truthful, unadulterated knowledge. Well, that comes directly from him. This is the key to becoming elevated, to becoming the most elevated being.
It's like choosing the right food for our minds.
Precisely. Nourishing ourselves with the pure, the positive, and avoiding the toxic stuff.
The Murli also mentions Brahma's day and Brahma's night. What are those? Are they like literal 24-hour periods?
No, not in the typical sense. They're metaphors for much larger cycles within this eternal drama. Brahma's day is a time of spiritual light, knowledge, and progress.
And Brahma's night.
Brahma's night is the opposite. It's spiritual darkness, ignorance, decline. Think of it like, those big cosmic cycles, the yugas.
So we're in a day cycle right now, this Sangam Yug.
That's the idea, yes.
Yes.
And it's a time of great opportunity for spiritual growth.
So what can we do to make the most of this Brahma's day, this time of light?
Two things. First, Tanasa study. Immerse yourself in this spiritual knowledge.
Okay. And second?
Teaching. Share it with others. That's a big one. The Murli says that this active engagement with the knowledge is what will lead to a high status in the next cycle.
So not just learning, but also sharing helps us to progress.
Exactly. And then there's another important thing. The Father is very clear about this. We need to renounce negativity, gated point really.
I can give an account. Literally drinking poison. What does that mean?
It means don't dwell on negativity. Don't let it consume you. You know, those negative thoughts, those toxic influences, it's like poison to the soul.
It's like a spiritual detox.
Precisely. And it ties in with this image, the Murli uses of impure clothes. How you go so?
What does that represent?
It's a powerful symbol of the imperceived state, which is the most degraded, impure state that every soul in this age is in because of this long cycle of birth and death.
Yeah.
It's like, our souls have been through a lot.
We've accumulated some baggage along the way.
Yeah, exactly. But the good news is the soul itself is imperishable.
It can't be destroyed.
No, it's eternal. It just sheds the physical body at the end of each life and moves on.
Okay, that's comforting to know.
It is. And it brings us back to this idea of becoming body unconscious, of understanding that we're souls, not bodies.
Right. So how does that understanding lead to this elevated state?
When you truly grasp that, when you remember you're a soul, not just this physical form, you start to detach from all the things that bind you to this world. Those attachments, desires, all that. And that detachment is what leads to becoming Kanko-e.
Which means?
Conqueror of attachment. And that's the hallmark of the deities in the Golden Age.
So they've totally transcended all those worldly desires and attachments.
Yes. And the Murli even uses the story of Dairaja as an example of this. Someone who has completely overcome attachment.
Oh, that's a great illustration.
And for someone who truly understands themselves as a soul, the transition between bodies, it's not a big deal. It's natural, even joyful. It's not something to fear.
It's like changing clothes, almost.
Exactly. And the text also mentions that souls who've gone off and adopted other religions, they'll eventually come back to this original understanding.
They'll remember their true home.
They will. It's inevitable.
It seems like the main point is to always remember that we're souls, children of God.
That's the essence of it.
But the text also acknowledges that it can be tough to keep track of all the detail.
It does. And it offers some really practical advice. It says, look, if you can't remember everything, just focus on the core understanding. Remember your connection to the Father.
Okay.
And it talks about Maya. Maya.
The illusion.
Exactly. It's the force that makes us forget who we are, where we come from.
It's like a cosmic veil of forgetfulness.
Yeah. And the Murli speaks directly to the listener, to you, and reminds you that you were also under the influence of Maya at one point.
We all were.
But by engaging with this knowledge, you're breaking free from that illusion and coming back to your true self.
It's like waking up from a dream.
It really is. And it reminds us that we started out pure, but then got caught up in the cycle of rebirth and became impure.
So the goal is to undo that, to purify ourselves again.
Exactly. And it talks about becoming concrete, totally free from attachment, even to this body we have now.
So it's not just about detaching from material things. It's about detaching from the idea of having a body at all.
In a way, yes. It's this tied to ambivalent detachment from the old sorrowful world. It's about yearning to return to that original incorporeal state.
And the Father gives this really powerful instruction. I just remember me alone. That's pretty direct, isn't it?
It is. And it highlights the importance of this direct connection with the Supreme Soul as the path to purification. And again, contrast this with Krishna, who, being a deity in the pure golden age, wouldn't have needed to give such an instruction.
Because in that pure state, remembrance would be natural, effortless.
Exactly.
And the title Akani is specifically used for the Father in this context.
Right. The purifier of the impure.
Right.
It's the Father, the Supreme Soul, who has the power to cleanse us of all the impurities we've accumulated.
He's the ultimate cleanser.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've talked about this profound knowledge. Let's switch gears a bit and talk about how it's communicated. The text mentions the Father's language. How does it explain that?
Well, it says that God, being the ocean of knowledge, the ocean of peace, and the ocean of happiness, needs a way to communicate with us, since we're embodied souls.
Right. He needs a medium.
Exactly. And his original language, it says, is Hindi.
Hindi.
But is translated so that everyone can access it.
And the goal is to share this knowledge as widely as possible.
Absolutely. The Murli is very clear about that. We need to introduce the Father to everyone, regardless of their background. It's about reestablishing the original eternal deity religion on a global scale.
Wow, that's ambitious.
It is, but it's also incredibly inspiring. And to help explain all this, the text brings in the Tingao Konambal as like the Trimurti.
The Trimurti, that's like a trinity of gods, right?
In a way, yes. It's a core concept in Hinduism, and the Murli uses it to explain how this knowledge is transmitted and how the creation unfolds.
Okay.
And it specifically mentions the father of humanity and his children, the Murlis, that he was shot from a Merupayan, the father of humanity and his children, the Kaliyedi finally took contract.
So who are they exactly?
Brahma is like the first soul to receive this knowledge from the Supreme Soul. He's the progenitor of this new spiritual lineage. And the Murli even suggests starting conversations with people by asking who they've come to. It's a subtle way of introducing the idea of a spiritual family.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about the teachings, it's about a community, a lineage.
Absolutely. It's about belonging, connection. And it's important to clarify that Brahma isn't God. God is the formless supreme soul. Brahma is like the first, most elevated child.
Okay, so there's a hierarchy within this spiritual family.
In a sense, yes. But the core understanding is that we're all children of the same father. And there's this saying, that really captures this idea.
The son shows the father.
Exactly. It means that by our actions, by how we live, we reveal the nature of our Father.
It's like walking the talk.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's how we become true instruments of this transformation.
Okay, so the Murli then gives a nice summary of the main points, the atat takonafokolan katamfokulantamfafa. Can you give us the key takeaways for our listeners?
Sure. The two most important things to remember are, 1, be careful what you listen to. Don't expose yourself to negativity. Stick to the pure knowledge from the Father. That's how you elevate yourself.
Guard your mind.
Exactly. And 2, work on becoming body unconscious. Remember that you're a soul, not a body, detached from this old, sorrowful world.
Detachment is key.
It is. And if you can do those two things, you're on the right path.
Okay. And then the Murli law offers a beautiful blessing. What's the message there?
It says, Anna salakye gare. Salfiya komba ye hai. Bua kyoni begero gare no. Sabota hai ispi bahamadi gare. Sab hai isko me ma saku ma elinge lahime. Ere faukan ko pasalago. One go ma me pur he lekin meno o kasheba. O kada cable one crackman say wa he samaria. Pur shika ken abahekel hagi. Haruna Hassan now can no cable largno ana. No bekofia nak hen no his lush. Any warrior hulu paba ha here. O has me ha popa bazab hata me mano we kit confluence age in your awareness. Experience ever increasing progress and become a most elevated destiny maker.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is. And it emphasizes that the Sangam Yoga is a time of incredible spiritual gain. There are things you can attain now that will last forever.
It's like a once-in-a-cosmic cycle opportunity.
Exactly. And it encourages us to remember this, to hold on to the thought that I have attained everything that was meant to be attained, so we don't waver or doubt.
Stay strong in that belief.
Exactly.
And then there's also a slogan. What's that about?
It says, Dalibirafer.
Hey.
Yeah, but no, se banas if you require abena kita pora.
Okay.
Let's come with Daga biro akano bepad.
I down pot down up. Yeah. Back the cat say like, yeah. Hahager from my higher you wanted his happy. She has Camila sir. And he as he calms down. That Tufi, vanilla, has he one up for me? As a hopping poem. Sporning down a nay, and then he and he is like, Hal Halga, when there eats seabidam on the breath of Brahmins is courage. And with this breath, even the most difficult tasks become easy. So courage is the key.
It is. That unwavering courage that comes from spiritual understanding is what allows us to overcome any obstacle.
And finally, there's an unexpressed hint. What's that all about?
It's a powerful one. It says, become ever victorious through the remembrance of your combined form.
Combined form.
It's talking about this experience of being constantly united with the Father, like Brahma Baba was.
So it's not just about remembering God, it's about remembering that we're one with him.
Exactly. And the message is, when you have that awareness, nothing can defeat you. You're eternally victorious.
Wow. That's a great note to end on.
It is.
This has been a truly incredible deep dive. So much to think about. You know, the eternal soul, the cyclical drama, this Sangam becoming body unconscious, connecting with the supreme soul. It all comes together to create such a profound and comprehensive spiritual understanding.
It does. It really challenges us to rethink our whole perspective on life.
So, to all our listeners out there, I want to leave you with this thought. What would it be like to see yourself and everyone else, primarily as a soul?
Mhm.
How would that change how you view the world, how you interact with others, how you live your life? It's a big question, and one that I think is well worth pondering. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
Until next time.